No one cares about the beginning of the year. All they care about is the final series. If you're in it and you're a chance to win it, you want that to carry. You want to be standing up on that podium at the back end of the season and lifting that trophy up.
He's probably been the best player in the competition in the last 8 or so weeks.
If you go to players throughout the years, or say the biggest problem that they've had at this club is there's been a lack of consistency with direction and leadership.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to me, DSPN. Yes, he's back. I want to say a big thank you to you for supporting this podcast. In the 3 weeks that I've been away, we've had another 1 million views on YouTube, which is just extraordinary. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate all your feedback, all your comments. Tried to jump online and reply to a few while I was away on holes. I want to thank Lachlan especially for the hard work. Tony Johnson, Tony Kemp, who's with me at the moment, JD, everyone who stepped up to the plate and continued broadcasting. We're back into it. We've got an NRL Grand Final to talk about this week. Of course, the All Blacks are playing Australia. We'll deal with that and other elements of the podcast. But our good mate Tony Kemp, former Warriors coach, very proud Kiwi, 25 tests, played his Pro League in both hemispheres with us. And I got to say, before we do anything else, and Lachlan, I'm going to need you to get on the editor here and put together a few clips, because before I went away, all your predictions so far, and I've been following this for the NRL Grand Finals, I think you're 7 of 8, mate. Is that right?
Well, and the one, Marty, welcome back, first of all.
Thanks, mate.
Great to hear that you had a good time over there and you relaxed, you worked so bloody hard. And just around that, the Canberra game at the beginning against Brisbane, I guess you could take that. I'd take that one because it ended up as a draw and then Brisbane get it. And for me, it just shows you how important it is to have that week off. And we'll talk a little bit about that with the win against Penrith on the weekend. But, yeah, mate, it's been a hell of a final series, it's been a hell of a final series. But I think if you go back to the beginning of the year as well, we may have said that Brisbane and Melbourne and Penrith were the 3 teams to look out for this year.
Here it is. The master of the prediction, Tony Kemp.
Melbourne in second spot. They want to get another week off. He's been there, done that enough times, Craig. I just think he'll get him up. And with Nico Hines back in the Cronulla side, I just think they get him. I think the Panthers will be too good. I'm going to go Canberra. I think Canberra at home. Ricky's been there, he's done that. I think Cronulla get him. I think Canberra's out in 2. I can't see Penrith not getting through to the next week.
I'm definitely going Melbourne. I think Melbourne will get Cronulla. I know you're going to go Brisbane because you're Brisbane, so I'm going to go Penrith.
All right, before we get into the grand final then, let's just track it back, because before I left, it was the first week of the finals. Warriors playing and were beaten by Penrith. I watched the Brisbane highlights of the game against against Canberra. What an extraordinary finish. I'll tell you what sucked about that, I thought, just quickly, is that I don't want rugby league to become like the Premier League, where all of a sudden a try gets scored and we're sitting around folding our arms for 5 minutes and all the emotion gets sucked out of the game and the love gets sucked out because there's a little minor error or something like that. And Canberra thought they'd won that game, and of course in Brisbane come back. And I wonder whether that really cost Canberra emotionally the next week, because, here's a team, I think, for the first time since 2009, the top seed lost 2 games. But at the very start of the year, I'm pretty sure, Melbourne, Penrith were the 2 teams most of us were predicting. And then Brisbane turn in an extraordinary performance on the weekend, coming from 14-0 down. And I watched that game in the pub, and I'd given it up at halftime. I didn't think they could come back from that. What is it about this Brisbane side, which is on a tear, mate? They're 12-2. And they've won 2 finals games, just coming from nowhere to be able to clinch those.
Yeah, look, there's so much to unpack, and just that conversation you've had there, Marty. Like, throughout the year, we've had, the Warriors going on a run and been in the top 4 for long periods of time. Brisbane out the back end, struggling to make it into the 8, and Penrith on the bottom of the competition. And you've got all this drama and theatre going on throughout the season, but when it comes down to the final series, you've got the teams who you thought you were going to be there at the beginning of the year playing in the final. You know what I mean? So when you look at Brisbane, when you look at Penrith, Cronulla, last weekend's games up against Melbourne, you really start to understand the makeup and the structure and the system of the clubs and what they're trying to build for the future. So the Brisbane thing shouldn't be really that surprising, because a couple of years ago, all but for the last 10 minutes, I think it was 13 minutes, where Nathan Cleary stepped up. Remember, he was limping. I thought he wasn't even going to finish the game with that bad leg injury. goes and rips it out of Brisbane's hands and gets, what was it, their fourth final or the third final.
Third final, yeah.
But Brisbane were a young team back then that everyone was picking to go and do great things. All right, so they have a pretty average year the following year, and then this year they go on a bit of a run, like you said, 12-2. That game last week against Penrith, when you're looking at it, and then why people say it is so hard to come from outside the four to win it, is that they went on a hell of a run, Penrith, but if you watch the game, you get to the last 15 minutes and they were gassed.
They're gassed, right?
They were gassed. The fatigue had kicked in, and you could see Brisbane coming home with a wet sail. They've had the week off. They're fresh as anything. And to score that try, Mariner down that right side, Reece Walsh has had to bust 4 tackles, get his hands free to throw it over the top. It's the area where the week before Canterbury had lots of fun. They went through 3 times down that right edge. That's exactly where they're attacking, and it was a metre either side. He gets tackled a metre and doesn't get the ball away. They don't win it. McLean gets back and catches that ball onside. He misses it by a metre. He scores the intercept try, and they probably win it.
Yep.
And it's just that bloody close. And Brisbane, you had to have the belief that, with Reece Walsh, and it's just like when you text me, and Brisbane a chance. Well, Reece Walsh is a chance if anyone's going to do it.
Well, he's probably been the best player in the competition in the last 8 or so weeks, hasn't he?
He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like he can play the game, and he plays it off the. Like he's like I say all year, he's rocks and diamonds. He throws that intercept pass. If he's back, the young Kiwi centre, and gets up and catches that ball, and they don't catch him, he scores. But he's going to throw that pass, isn't he? He's going to make that run. He's going to create something. And going into a grand final, it's exactly the same thing. You'd love to have Reece Walsh in your team. Geez, you'd love to have him in the Warriors. We had that. Me and Lockie had that conversation about a fullback. Different team if he's in the Warriors side, but they're a definite chance. Got the best front row. Reynolds has been there. He's a big game player. He kicks that goal. He's lost one against Penrith. He's won one for South. So he's all about redemption. It's probably his final season. Yeah. You've got backup of Ben Hunt. We talked about roster. So if Ben Hunt doesn't play, they don't make the final. He kicks the field goal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The same could be said about Jonah Pizzette down in Melbourne to get him to the following week, because Jahrome Hughes gets another 2 weeks as armed. He'll have a look at how he played when he came back. Their spine's back in action. And then you look at, we always knew that when we did that roster call at the beginning of the year, when we had that podcast, it was all about the roster getting you to that back end.
Yep.
And it's, for me, the fairy tale was Penrith getting through with Ivan, and Ivan's a fantastic coach. To get that team to where they are and miss it by the skin of his teeth for the 5th time is just a wonderful effort. But I think Lockie's happy that Brisbane are there. I think everyone is happy that Brisbane are there. So Brisbane up against Melbourne, for me, I think Brisbane have got a bit of work to do to beat them.
Total contrast styles here, isn't it? Again, there's so much to talk about with this, and we'll just pause on previewing the game for a second. I just want to go back to what you're talking about, the squad depth, right? And the Warriors really suffered from this, losing Mitch Barnett and losing Metcalf, and I think it was 4 and 7 to close out the season, and then lose the final game. So that's 4 and 8. So that's a 33% win record in 12 games, which after the 10 and 3 start, that's what happens when you don't have A, B and C players in those key positions. And it is a real lesson, isn't it? And it's not something that we're, splicing DNA by figuring this out. But these other teams have that ability to lose a Jahrome Hughes and keep winning at this time of year. And I think that it's just something the Warriors are going to have to think about in the future, just in terms of, and whether it's the young guys coming through or whether they reinforce with a couple of old guys till some of these young guys are actually good enough to play. But somehow you've got to be able to cover for those guys. And I thought at the end of the season, that's what the toll was. Losing Barnett, losing Metcalf, we could get away with it for 3 or 4 weeks maybe. Lecker scores that brilliant try against Newcastle, but you can't buy that every single game. And so these teams, again, to me, when I'm watching them in the finals, they're a step up again. And this is what the Warriors have to aspire to. And this is what I want the Warriors fans to aspire to as well. To me, it's just not good enough, saying, hey, look, we love the club and we love the boys and, let's make the top 8. Look, I said this year, let's make the top 8, and I'd be happy with that. I am. But I want them to kick on from here. I want to see this team playing at this time of year and playing these games with a really good chance of winning them. Because, Tone, the same teams every year are making it. It's still Melbourne. It's still Penrith. You said this at the start of the year. It's still the Dogs have come right. It's still Cronulla. It's still Brisbane. We need to be in that equation. I want the Warriors' name to be in that equation.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to talk about here. The first thing I always tell you, no one cares about the beginning of the year. All they care about is the final series. If you're in it and you're a chance to win it, you want that to carry. You want to be standing up on that podium at the back end of the season and lifting that trophy up. Okay, yeah. Melbourne, 11 out of the last 20 times been to finals.
Well, that is a record that stands against. Look, Bill Belichick, Sir Alex Ferguson. It stands up there, doesn't it? In any sport, any comp in the world is what it is.
People talking about the GOAT. He is the GOAT. You know what I mean? He's meant to be retiring every year, bellyache, but he does so well with team. And the thing with him is that, and this is what I mean about depth and structure, like he puts players, the young boy that came on, that he looks a little bit like Sika Manu, and played for Penrith and pulled him out of the Penrith structure because he couldn't make it in a grand final. Pulls the big front rower out from West Tigers because he needed a big front rower because he lost Jesse Bromwich in a grand final. You know what I mean? So they can replace players and depth in their team to get them into finals. And this is the thing that you have, like, mate, these podcasts are all about clicks and views, and you've got to be able to take the good with the bad.
Oh, of course, mate. And I appreciate everyone's point of view, regardless of whether
there's a section of supporters that are just blind. And there's no matter what you say, you can never say the right thing. But your opinion, and it's mine especially, is I don't mind telling you what I think. Whether you like it or not, I don't really give two cents or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I'm not going to swear, but it's based on how I see the game and what I think's happening. Now, I'll give you an example. If Elise Katoa, who they let go, is here, all right, and he's coached right, and we've had this coaching issue for years where they sack the coaches, and I bet if you go to players throughout the years, or say the biggest problem that they've had at this club is there's been a lack of consistency with direction and leadership. Yeah, so today, okay, if you have Elise Katoa in the side and you have Reece Walsh at fullback, who you had and you could have
both
kept
those players,
guess what? Now you're a chance of winning a grand final. All right, but currently, if you look at the last 4 weeks, especially 3 weeks, and this week, you tell me, all right, does Tavita Harris get the ball on the outside, chip it over the top, Chance Nickel-Croxty goes through, tips it forward and scores a try, like Munster did for Peppenhausen?
No,
you know what I mean?
No, not at this time of year. He's not doing that.
Tanner Boyd come in the biggest minor premiership and win that game to take him through to the big prelim to win the final, like Jonah Prezet? Who everyone knows, the Warriors should go and get him. Go sign that kid right now. You know what I mean? Because he is...
But look, Tony, I believe this is what Webby is building. I mean, I do have faith in this guy. Two top eights in 3 years is a hell of an improvement on everything over the last 12 to 15 years. Almost,
100%. So when you lose, answering your question, when you lose the Barnetts and the Luke Metcalfs, like, have the players that can actually cover you to make sure that when you get to that position, you're going to win a game. Because when you have the Jonah Prezet come through and do that and have a look at Jahrome Hughes when he comes back and plays that game, you go into that final this week, if you're a Melbourne supporter, you've got a shitload of confidence.
No, of course, mate.
But if you have a look through those teams that are getting to that final, the same thing can be said about Brisbane. You don't have Ben Hunt in the side. They don't kick the field goal to win the game.
How is his story? Here's a guy who for 10 years has been having nightmares, right, about dropping that.
100%.
And here he is, 10 years later, with a chance to be the ultimate hero for Brisbane. Now, it's not going to come down to him or not, but that play he made against Canberra, where he kicks the field goal and it doinks in. But here he is, I bet if you ask this guy, this is what he's dreamed of, nightmares for 10 years. I just want another chance.
No,
I just want another chance.
And that's where, like, I agree with you. I like Andrew Webster. I think he's a good coach and he's straight up and he calls it as it is. But if you want to put your effort into supporting something, then don't support mediocrity. Because if you've got the current squad, and this is my honest belief, the current squad will not win you a grand final because you haven't structured it right. All right, they need a really good half, another really good half. They need the thing with a fullback. All right. If you look at the two fullbacks who are playing this week, they're probably two of the fastest fullbacks in the competition, and they can pass the football. You know what I mean? So you need a fullback of that caliber. By the way, you had Reece, so you know what you can get. And I think if you put Elise Katoa out there, who's the arguably the best second row in the competition, a la like LA Lautitas, and then you've got the kids coming through like Dimitri and Leka.
Yeah.
You know, you've got this junior group coming through. Now we're talking.
Yeah, I keep saying, and I did say this, I think, at the start of the year, and hindsight's always a beautiful thing, isn't it? But I still think we're 3 or 4 players light to actually get to the level of these teams. And when you look at the way that these teams raise their game for the final as well, I'm not sure that we're competing with these teams. But let's talk about the 2 teams that are there. 22-2 Melbourne, 30-14 Brisbane are the 2 results this year. The Brisbane one is really significant because that's the win that took them into the top 4 over the line and gave them that position where you've got to be in the top 4 to win this. You were saying all year, and I think most of us were saying as well, if there's one team that could do it, it's Penrith. But even Penrith, it eventually caught up with them. And I think, when you're talking about, they're 1 game away from a grand final, don't forget, before they won the 4, they got to the final the previous year. So that's 6 years. Right?
Yeah.
So during that 6 years, Tony, they've played almost another full half a season of playoff games. That has to take its toll eventually, doesn't it?
Well,
and that's why I don't think any team outside the 4 really has a realistic chance. They were probably the best bet of all. But as you say, 14-0 up, they just ran out.
They just ran out of juice.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't up for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Warriors full, like I say in the locker, Warriors full house at home. Got to get them. Go to Canterbury, 70,000 in Sydney, full house. Got to get them. Go to Brisbane, like that was honestly. And if you've been to Suncorp in a full house, it's the best stadium to watch footy, and you get done in the last 3 minutes. You know what I mean? So they just ran out. The tank was bare. They couldn't keep going. And I think if they went to the final, Melbourne would have been quite happy to get them. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but Melbourne are quite happy to get Brisbane as well because there's a couple of factors that are in Melbourne's favour here. One, the spine. All right,
so you've been talking about it all year.
The spine are back, and Jahrome Hughes, if you had doubt about his arm, you watched that game on the weekend.
What a tough hombre that man is.
You want big game players to play in big games, and Peppenhausen was back, scores that wonderful try. Munster was phenomenal in that game, and Jahrome Hughes, the way that he just took off and fended with that broken arm.
And you also saw the break from Grant at the end there, where all of a sudden the opposition's backpedaling and he makes 20 metres.
I'm going to talk about Harry Grant. And then you look at Brisbane, who they play on Sunday, they've got to play again on Sunday. The other point is the 2 days, whether people say, and whether Madge says that's rubbish, it's not. Like 2 days up Melbourne's sleeve to recover and get better. Jahrome Hughes for another 2 days of recovery, and especially, they're going to be hitting the ground, absolutely running.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course, they're coming off hurting from their final last year. It was 14-6. It was a low-scoring game, but their spine's playing, and they've got this guy called Harry Grant. Now, I've watched Harry Grant through this final series. He's made decisions and led this team around and thrown passes and defended, and never ever thought that I'd see anyone as good as Cameron Smith. I got to say, I actually think that Harry Grant's going to be better.
Wow.
I think Harry Grant is going to be better than Cameron Smith.
But why do you rate Cameron Smith? Cameron Smith, I always rated because of his consistency. Like, to me, he was never anything other than a 7.5 out of 10. He never played below that level, did he?
Well, nearly 400 games in the NRL, that's the first thing. Playing 80 minutes as a hooker is another thing.
What, 12 origins in a row or something insane
Consistently
like that?
repping at the highest level, which Harry Grant is doing all of this at the moment. But the game is changing. Like, the game has changed so much, and Harry Grant, his decision-making, even as captain, being picked as captain, the emulation with Cameron Smith, I think they're on a par at the moment. What I'm saying is, I think Harry Grant can go to another level.
How old is he? What, 26 or 7 or something?
Yeah, he's in the prime.
He's still got another 6 or 7
Yeah, he's in the prime of his career. So I think we're witnessing someone really special at the moment. And I'm sorry, Lachlan, but,
Oh, here we go.
This game on the weekend, I think it's set up for Melbourne. And I think Melbourne are going to win it quite easily.
Or the Brisbane fairy tale continues. And fairy tales don't exist in sport. Don't get me wrong, I don't believe in this kind of stuff. But occasionally it does happen. Teams get on a roll. Look, they've got out of jail once. They've got out of jail again. So it's almost like they're playing with house money. Did they go in completely relaxed and go, no, because it's a grand final, obviously, and they've got 2 years ago to think about. But they're thinking, like, maybe the gods are working with us today. Maybe they are.
Yeah, look, I don't think they get out of jail if Penrith didn't have to play all the way through. I think if they're playing Penrith and Penrith have had the week off, or had a break, I don't think they get Penrith in that last 13 minutes. And with Melbourne, they've had, that's what I mean, like the 2 days mean so much to Melbourne. They've had the week off, they've gone out. If you listen to Cameron Smith, for instance, talking about finals because he's been in so many of them. The most important game for them was the first one because the week off was really important because they get to that, they're rested, they go hard, and you see the game against Cronulla. Look, I thought Cronulla were admirable. I thought they had a chance,
but they were never at that level, though. Were they?
Look, I think they were at that level. I think the referee killed the game. No, in the 60th minute there were 19 penalties, mate.
It's like a game of rugby, isn't it?
I'm just going to say it was a game of rugby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was getting frustrated watching the TV. So to hear Fitzgibbon say, like, it's a final, I'm yelling at the TV going, Klein, it's a final, mate. Let the game go.
He's actually a good ref, though. Actually, Klein, I do like him.
Yeah. So I think the game will go, and I think that suits Melbourne. You know, Melbourne are in Melbourne, like. They don't have to worry about the Sydney and the Brisbane hype. They go into Sydney under the radar. The experience in the team for finals is phenomenal, especially in the spine. And they're coming off they wear the Brisbane hype early on and get into a grind. They're not going to get fatigued, you know. And I think it's not about what Brisbane can bring. I think it's stopping Melbourne. You watch that Melbourne game, you go, I'm sitting there going, I should think Melbourne will win it, and they'll win it quite easily.
Well, he's 7 out of 8. He says, which isn't a bad record when it comes to the finals, mate. So let's wait and see, and let's revisit this next week. 7 out of 8. Overall, in terms of the season, what we've seen so far, they always say every year it gets bigger, it gets faster and everything. Does it? Has it, in your opinion, watching this game? Is the game better now than we were watching it last year? Are the players better than they were last year? Are they faster than is the game as a spectacle better than it was last year?
I don't think I think it's structured. I'm not a real big fan of the structured play. You know, like every team's offensively doing the same thing. The players are definitely faster and stronger and fitter. You know, you look at the Payne Haas's, you look at the Harry Grants. For me, Marty, look, because you're watching football all the time and you're going, well, how do you bring back football? Because for me, you've got to bring back actual purist footballers into the football game. The likes of Reece Walsh, you want more of those, because it is very robotic. You know what I mean? The only way I think you can do that is to cut down the interchange, because what they do with the interchange is they've got these 8 interchanges and they keep changing them in and out. People are starting to play longer and they're giving them the rest and they're coming back on and no one's fatigued.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the same as Test rugby, mate. I mean, it used to be that the last 20 minutes, that's when the All Blacks owned the game, and because we're used to out-fatigued teams, right? But now, of course, you've got 7 or 8 players that come on. And look, the other thing that I get frustrated with is the 6 again. You know, like
I don't like that rule. And just talking about the fatigue factor, you know, like Penrith, no one's mentioned it at the moment, but to lose Sorensen on that left edge and then to lose Martin at some stage there, and you're taking your 2 back rows out, which means that your bench has to play in different positions and your middle gets chewed up. They just all ran out of fuel. I don't think it happens if they have those guys staying on there for. You're taking 80-minute footballers off.
Yep.
So what it says to me is, like, bring some fatigue back into the game. You know, players are 24/7 training and fitness and doing their extras and all this sort of stuff. For 80 minutes, you're pulling them off, giving them a break, putting them back on. You're not getting any change in the fatigue of the football game where football starts to flow. And for me, I don't think it's an absolute spectacle to watch, Marty, because I actually think the game's really robotic and structured. So what I would like to see is, you know, blokes getting tired in the middle, on the edges, and a Stacey Jones coming in or Sean Johnson coming at them and just playing football.
Yeah, because we don't see that enough these days, do we? We don't. No, you're right, actually it has if you look back 10 years. You got Melbourne to win this game, and you probably predicted that at the start of the year. Brisbane, it's going to be a game that Lachlan's not going to enjoy. When you're watching these games as a fan, it's a terrible game to watch because you sit there, you pace, you lie under the duvet, you hide behind the couch, your team goes up, you sit there and you sulk because you think we're going to blow this. It's almost a relief, isn't it? You kind of celebrate it probably a week afterwards if you're a fan.
Well, the only problem that we got as Kiwis is that we have to wait till 10 o'clock at night for it to come on. You know what I mean? And if you have a look over the last couple of weeks for Brisbane, they go to Canberra and play in the afternoon. That killed Canberra. They should have played a night game because they probably would have won it. Brisbane is a Group 1 firm track runner. You know, that's another thing that's in Melbourne's favour. It's at 8 o'clock at night. in Sydney, and who knows what the field's going to be like. They're just used to playing down there in Melbourne in the cold and that sort of stuff. So when it comes to the final period, the only thing I don't like about it is that it's on so late at night in New Zealand. But to have, I think everyone, to be honest, I think everyone over the last 5 years are silently saying, geez, it'd be nice to have anyone else but Penrith in the final. So in saying that, I think the Brisbane-Melbourne final is everyone's going to stay up and watch it.
My prediction is Ben Hunter's going to be in the headlines at the end of this. After 10 years. He's going to be in the headlines somehow. After
Reece Walsh is.
Yeah.
You don't know what for. I'm picking, if you want to have a bet, Harry Grant for Clive Churchill.
DSPN.